Refletindo.
Eu estou nervosa e você ainda.
Só aparecer em rede mundial.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for watching. We're going to start the panel about information management through BIM. And I'm going to introduce our guests. On my right side, we have the graded student, Bruna Bitencourt. Bruna is an architect who holds a MBI degree in Building Information Modeling from SENAI CIMATEC and MBA in Project Management from FGV. During her BArch, she earned a Science Without Borders scholarship and studied for 2 semesters at Korea University. Currently, she is a master's student and studies a scan-to-BIM workflow applied to Brazilian heritage buildings. She currently works as a BIM consultant at SENAI CIMATEC. On my left, we have the architect in urban planner, Bruno Leão. He also has a master's in civil engineering and is a PhD student in architecture and urbanism. He studies the constructability of complex architectural forms generated with the use of digital tools of parametric design. He's a professor, researcher, and the coordinator of the Architecture and Urbanism undergrad program at SENAI CIMATEC. From Purdue University, we have 2 professors. The first one is Luciana Debs. He's an assistant professor of construction management in the School Construction Management Technology at Purdue University. She received her PhD from Purdue University main campus. Her previous degrees include a MS from the Technical Research Institute of São Paulo in Brazil. Prior to her current position, she worked in design coordination in construction and real estate development companies in Brazil. In addition to teaching and research, she currently also coordinates the design and construction integration major at Purdue University. And least but not last, we have Dr. Soowon Chang, who received her PhD in building construction from Georgia Institute of Technology. During her PhD, she worked in urban redevelopment projects in Tokyo for smart and connected communities supported by the National Institute for Environmental Studies in Japan. She received her BS in Architectural Engineering, her BA in Management for Science and Technology, and MS in Architectural Engineering with emphasis on Construction Management from Yuha Humans University in South Korea. So I'd like to thank you, everyone that's watching, and of course our guests that have time to be here and discuss about this most important subject, BIM. That's something that's getting space in our construction industry. So thank you for having the time to be here with us, and good afternoon. I open the panel if you want to add some information about you or something that I haven't said yet. So be my guest. You like to add something for now?
I just like to thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to be here discussing a so important subject that is now in our industry. Thank you.
I'm going to start with some questions. If you were watching at home, you can type your question, and by the end of our panel, we're going to open for question. The same thing about with our audience. If you have some questions, you can, I don't know, hold your hand, and we're going to give you the word. So first, in Brazil, much is discussed about the lag of construction industry in terms of productivity when compared to other countries. Which aspect of the construction industry do you consider most relevant in your home countries, and how do they affect the productivity rates of the local construction industry? I would like Dr. Debs to start.
So, oh, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. So I had opportunity to work back in Brazil before coming here, and coming here, I was, very eager, and I said everybody uses BIM here. And when I got here and got to work in some companies, it was not really the case. It's been a while, so things have changed, but we still don't fully utilize the potential of building information modeling as a process, not only as a 3D model, to actually improve industry's productivity. So we're getting better at rework, at reducing rework with a lot of coordination. So here, I can see doing like a lot of people do clash detection using building information modeling. But if you think about it, maybe 99% of that is done based on the 3D geometrical model. We're getting better now to expand that. And I was mentioning to my friends that I was going to have this talk in Brazil, because when I worked back in Brazil, there was a lot of talk and a lot of mentions to BIM, but nobody was actually doing. And then a friend of mine now told me, oh, we're using BIM for everything. It's like, okay, so I think there has been a change, but still there is so much more. I think the more research we do, the more we see how we can integrate BIM and actually improve construction productivity. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, it does. And Dr. Chang, do you have the same impression? I know you studied at South Korea, for example. What can you bring?
Yes, I studied South Korea and I have an experience in construction site on South Korea. And when we implement BIM in our project, we need to think about some companies that doesn't have manpower and like young technicians, because there are many small companies. We need to include the small companies in to complete our entire project anyway, but those companies doesn't have enough technical capability and manpower to adapt it. So we need appropriate training and workforce development for them before start a project if we want to boost our productivity during construction. That's my impression from South Korea. And I'd like to stress, Dr. Debs just mentioned, focusing on a process. If we think about manufacturing industry, when they develop any new products or new design of the product, they think about how they produce that product in a factory. They are actually considering the process design that might happen in the factory. But if we think about our industry, when we design something, the building will be a product in our industry. And when we design building, we don't quite consider the construction process. So I want to stress out what Dr. Debs mentioned. If we think about what the next stakeholders need to do with my products, it probably can improve our productivities in general throughout the entire project life cycle.
So if I get it right, the concept is there, but we still don't have, as you said, the manpower to implement it, right? Do you have the same opinion? Do you agree? Bruna works with that here.
I would like to add something to the panel. I feel that we should go, in the case of Brazil, we should go a little bit beyond just talking about beauty information modeling, because I feel like, as a rule of thumb, of course, you cannot say that for every single company, but our process is really, really artisanal still. And so, for instance, it's really common for us to see masonry clad buildings and cast in place concrete structure solutions for our buildings. And sometimes that's a little bit difficult to translate for a BIM software, properly. So we have that issue when it comes to the Brazilian companies. Also, I feel, of course, I do not want to say that about every single company that there is in Brazil, but I also feel that Brazilian companies are a little bit late in joining trends and new technologies in the industry due to a lack of interest or perhaps a lack of research. So there is that as well, that I feel that add to the lack of productivity that we could possibly have over here in Brazil. As I said before, I do not want to say that every single company is like that, but it is really common. So I feel like that's a really big issue here in my country.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Bruna because it seems so wrong to me that we have all this effort to try to digitalize our design process with the models and all these efforts to uh, organize the information. And here in Brazil, especially when we go to this construction site, we still see a worker stacking brick over brick to build a wall. It seems anachronic to me. It seems that all the effort that we have doesn't do the results that we like to have in all this process. So one of our biggest challenges, at least here in Brazil, is to change the mindset of our construction companies and the workers that work there in the front line of the construction.
I feel like the older entrepreneurs are not really keen on, you know, learning new technologies and learning new trends because I feel like they think that if it's working, why should I change it? Instead of thinking about the betterments that we could possibly apply to our workflow.
So here now we have a national strategy for beam dissemination headed by the federal government called Estratégia BIM Brasil, BIM BR strategy, which established a roadmap for beam dissemination till the year 2028. In order to continue discussing the experience of being outside Brazil, do you know if there is any national strategy to disseminate beam in your country, or has this agenda already been exhausted? Like, then, Dr. Chang, could you start?
Yes. So even before I came to US, Korean government announced that public government construction project, the budget exceeding 50 millions, that should be those project must use BEAM for their contracting documents and for their submittals. That's the movement in South Korea, and they are keep expanding to the much smaller and smaller project in a budget wise. However, still that only focus on the building construction project, but still the infrastructure construction project, due to several challenges in the technology, software, and the lack of transition, we are still struggling to force that utilization of BEAM. I hope it answers
And
your questions.
yeah, and what about the U.S.? Do you know if there is any regulation or something that address that?
I think Dr. Debs answered much better than me, but as far as I know, U.S. GSA, General, uh, General Service Administration, they are recommending use BEAM for the projects they are involving. However, it's not kinds of legal, force, so that as far as I know, it's not mandatory for industry.
Dr. Debs, do you like to add something?
Yeah, so it's the same. GSA is a very, very large stakeholder in the U.S. and it's and it does have an interest because the General Service Administration controls the design, but also it's the client, so they're going to actually use the building and maintain the building. So there's a lot of incentives for them to do that. Other than that, the US is extremely decentralized, so there is not a federal mandate of any sort. So a lot of the use is based on the client push. So there's, if the client, again, for the larger clients, maybe hospitals, clients that do lean construction, they will want to do that. But if there's not really a client push, or the other option, sometimes it's the municipality, and there are some studies to see if you can submit for the project approval. But there is not, again, it's very decentralized. And that's why we always think, everyone is doing BIM in the US, but that is not the case. The US also works about, I don't know the exact statistics, but most of the companies that do construction, they're considered small companies as well, and it falls back to what Dr. Chang said, which is the cost for them to do it, the lack of training is also a problem. So the larger ones, definitely, they're all doing it because they saw an advantage, and if especially in the clash detection and saving some rework, that yes, they're going for it. But most of the times it's their own interests, and then there's the push for GSA, but I am not aware of any national strategy.
Can you explain more how it works, this federal mandate?
So over here in Brazil, we have this strategy that it's supposed to make all the Brazilian companies that work with civil engineering to use building information modeling until 2028. We still have a very long way to go. It officially started last year, 2021, and ever since there have been a few decrees that have been released that will also not necessarily mandate, but they will recommend the usage of BIM in certain cases that are very specific. But we still do have a very, very long way to go in order for us to feel like Brazil does use building information modeling in that sense. And we are working towards that, of course. Over here at SENAI CIMATEC, we are actually doing doing a BIM implementation service in a municipality here in my state, my home state of Bahia, which is called Feira de Santana. Okay, and it's a larger town over here, so it's actually a quite important deal, right? It's actually quite important that we are able to do that, and we hope that will probably disseminate the same idea to other municipalities to do the same. Also, I would like to add that I feel like state degrees are very important here in Brazil, right? So the implementation of decrees in every single state that will mandate the usage of BIM will probably make it a lot easier for us to be able to use that in a national sense, right? So I feel like that the state of Paraná, Soowon, Paraná is in the south of Brazil, right? They already have a decree that they are working towards that sort of like implementation statewide. But I feel like that over here in Brazil, it will only really work if every single state does that sort of action. Yes?
Go ahead, Dr. Debs.
I'm muted, sorry. So can I ask, what do they mean by BIM? Because BIM has a lot of different meanings for different people. So what does it mean to implement BIM?
In our case, in the municipality of Feira de Santana, we are actually doing a diagnosis right now. So they have many plans on how to use it. But of course, we have to prioritize what is the action that we have to follow, right? So as of now, we are working on training their team, and we are still studying which steps we are going to take in order for them to actually use it. But as of now, of course, that can change until the end of process, but we feel like the part of coordination, the projects will be very important for them, and also analysis, code checking and making sure that all the projects are up to code. It's very important for them, and also to make sure that's done quicker, right? Because nowadays they spend a very long time, like working on just one project, and they would like a solution that will make that a little bit easier. Speaking of that, we actually have a initiative here in Salvador, which is the city that we are talking now. Suwon. We have a initiative that is called Metropolis, which is a platform that will allow the municipality of Salvador to code check all the projects that come through the municipality. So they are able to check all the architecture projects and make sure they are up to code, and if they are following every single rule that there are for them to follow. So that's one thing that we are probably going to be inspired to do with the municipality of Feira de Santana. So it really depends, because we have to think of each case, right? If you're thinking about the municipality, I feel like the analysis is really important. But if you're talking about, a private company, then probably, working on not doing rework, as you said before, I feel like that's also very important. So it really depends. I feel like also in Brazil, one really big use of building information modeling will be, just making sure everything costs right, because we do have a very large problem with corruption here in Brazil. So just make sure that all the projects are up to, they cost properly. I don't want to, badmouth my country, like over here in the international platform. Am I allowed to say that?
You already did. So
Oh,
yeah.
no.
It was not allowed. That's okay. But I think it's okay. I think Bruno wants to say something.
Yeah, in your speak, Bruna, you said one thing that's important, also because Dr. Debs asked that, is what is implementation? One of the main points is that we always think that this implementation is teaching the tools. So we always start, oh, let's teach Revit or ArchiCAD or any other tools. But mainly because our workers or the professionals of our industry only understand that the transit of information in our industry is based on a blueprint or a section or a facade or whatever. And this process needs to face our minds or our mindset to the information. That's the main point of the BIM. Because it doesn't matter if you are talking about a 3D model or a 3D model or a blueprint or a section or any other kind of representation of the building. The main point is the information. That's what we have to face, and that's our biggest challenge, because our undergraduation course or the process that forms our professionals is faced to the representation, or the wall is 2 lines in the AutoCAD. We start like this, and that's the problem, because these two lines represents the wall that have bricks and the finish of the walls and all the layers and much more information that it's only in the head of the designer, and if the design doesn't write down it in some place, it get lost forever in this process. And change this mindset of our professionals and all the persons that hire our services. It's our challenge. The presentations is only the way to deliver the information and make the professionals understand that it's the hardest part of this whole process.
I have to agree with you. Also, I feel like, as you said, uh, when, when you're thinking of a professional of the architecture, engineering, construction industry, most of them over here in Brazil, they think of a BIM model as a mere 3D model as well. So they do not know, or they choose to ignore that the information management is the main part of using the technology, right? So I definitely agree with you, because even when they are trying to use the software, sometimes they are not really aware that they are meant to add information to the model. So,
Yeah, and here in Brazil, we start like that because when I was in the university, I remember seeing a speaker, a lecture, sorry, a lecture of Revit representative, and he said the magic of the Revit was it will do sections automatically, and the whole crowd, wow,
you will be able to render.
yeah. So it was magic. We didn't understand it. It only would make our life as a designer easier in this process. The sections, all the blueprints, floor plans, and everything would be generated automatically. That and that's a wrong start because it sold to us the wrong idea about this whole process of the BIM idea.
So I think we all agree that we need to change the mindset of the industry. If I'm not mistaken, at Purdue we have like a minor in BIM, it's a major or something like that. Yeah, could you like explain a bit about the minor or major in BIM, how it works, so we can share what we have here and the ways we are helping the industry to change the mindset, Professor Debs.
Okay, I will try to explain. It's it's a major and a minor, and it's actually hosted in a separate department. But I know they have. It is really what we call here is a computer graphics major, and it's hosted by their department, which means that they have a lot of computational thinking. So the majors kind of core is in that, and they do have classes. So it does start with the visual representation, but the core focus, then what happens is our students actually do take the representation class as well, but the ones that are in the BIM minor and major, they extend that into really being the managers of the information and kind of keepers of the information that is added as an extra layer to the model.
Here we don't have a major or a minor, but we try to introduce this topic on our undergrad program. So we have in civil engineering and architecture urbanism. We have some courses with BIM or with the tools. So our students, when they're done with their bachelor degree, they know and they know that they need to add the information. It's not like just the 3D representation of the construction. Okay. You, Bruna?
We also have a Master in Business Innovation in Building Information Modeling, which helps the professionals that are already graduated in architecture, civil engineering, or whatever area that they might be interested in studying building information modeling as well. So we do have that, but it's more focused on the professional, right? So I really feel like it's really important that we change the mindset in a way that our students are already leaving college, like leaving their studies, already knowing about the technology and about the methodology, right? I feel like the methodology is the most important thing that they should know, because I did know about the technology when I left college, right? I did know how to use the software, but I didn't really know much about exactly how
But
to
how to
connect.
use the software, how
Exactly.
to really use the software.
To connect the software with the information that we need to.
Exactly. So I feel like that's really important. So we are trying to change that a little bit by little bit. Hopefully, yeah, step by step. Hopefully, one day we'll have a major just focus on build information modeling over here in Brazil too. I feel like that would be a really major step towards our end goal.
Yeah, for sure, we need that to change the whole scenario. So next question, the ISO 19650 standard address the digitalization organization of data about civil engineering works and buildings, including BIM. These standards help the construction industry make more effective and efficient projects by establishing design, construction, and manufacturing process. What do you feel is the greatest change this new standard brings to the table? What's the biggest change?
Is it okay if I add to the panel right
Yeah.
now? Okay. I'm really excited about the ISO, right? Because I feel like we have, and I'm probably going to out myself a little bit here, but I feel like we do have a problem organizing all the information that we can extract from the model. And I feel like they do add a layer of intelligence to the method. So I really appreciate the ISO as it is. But what I feel like it's the most important part of it, in my opinion, of course, you guys are all welcome to disagree with me, but I really like the level of information need concept that they do bring to the table, because we do have some industry made standards that help us to understand how well developed the model is, such as level of development that was developed by in the US, right? Luciana, I think, yeah, it was developed in the US, and also the level of detailing that was developed in the UK. However, they are very helpful, of course. However, they are not standardized, and because of that, that ends up what the result that we do have is a lack of communication between all the stakeholders that are involved in the process. So, for instance, it is quite common for me to say, oh, we are developing a model, we are creating a model in LOD 200, and then that will probably mean something to me, but it can possibly mean something else to you. So there's a lack of, we have a problem of communication, an issue of communication over here. That's what I'm trying to say. And I feel like the concept of level of information need really tries to help us in that way, because we define what is the level of information that we do need, the requirements of information that we do need from that model, from that particular workflow. So I feel like that will solve the communication issues. Although I also feel like that should probably be more developed in the future releases of the ISO. So there is that, but I really feel like that's a really big improvement that we do have.
Professor Debs, would you like to add something? Yeah.
I'll be very blunt to the fact that we don't use the ISO standards that much in industry here, so I don't have knowledge about, like, I don't know what's in it to comment, sorry.
That's okay. We do use it because we have that problem, right? So we are trying to solve that because that's something that happens so much to me, at least, that we are trying to sell a service in which we are selling a model that is LOG 200, and then suddenly the client has a completely different expectation of what means a LOD 200 model, right? So that's
Yeah, and I would even like argue that sometimes those definitions kind of hinder, because you don't have to develop the whole model in an LOD, I don't know, 300. There are certain parts in, like, it could be a blend, and that's even harder to translate, right?
I totally agree. Sometimes people expect the entire model to be LOD 300, for instance, but sometimes we do not have enough information in order to make sure that information that we are extracting for the model is reliable. So
Yeah, that's one point that I have not decided if I agree or if I don't agree with the ISO, for example, because this kind of standard definition seems wrong when you are talking about industries all over the world that have different characteristics, different level of industrialization. And for me, what seems more reasonable in this whole scenario is that in each process, or perhaps in each country, we can standardize this main documentation, like a P mandate or a PEP, or something that can assure the information that building or the process of developing and construction that building needs. How we are going to organize, perhaps the ISO won't bring all the answers to this one kind of group of professionals, or it might in some point, but I think we need, that's why I don't agree. I don't know if I agree or disagree, because we need to start in somewhere, and that's where the ISO can join the whole process, because it might be our start point to define all, to model this standardization of the information for a specific building or design process or construction. And yeah, it's a little bit blur for me if we should or shouldn't follow the ISO or any other type of standard. But for that kind of discussion, we also need more professionals that understand and can discuss this kind of subject.
but don't you think that the ISO could be a start point for that discussion? You know, creating a national wide
Yeah, but
documents, right?
I also think that ISO can is a little bit complicated. For example, when we are talking about the name of a file, it a set of strings, or sorry, 7 or 8 fields of strings that all that try to show us information, but it's not clearly. It's hard to start with the ISO, and I think that's the problem. It's too advanced for some professionals or some countries that doesn't have this level of developing their industry.
It's too advanced for the discussions that we are having right now in the country. You feel like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like you think that the industry is not like mature enough to apply what the standard, or like we don't, as we said, we think we need to change the mindset of the industry, and if we use the ISO, it's kind of make it harder for them to apply the concept of BIM. Is that it?
I think it's not the right start point for implementation. Make them, the professionals, understand it's the challenge, why the information need to be organized, why they need to do that. It's, for me, a better way than giving them a book of I don't know how many pages the ISO has in the end, and saying to them, here, you have to follow this right now, because if you don't, it will be spurred from the industry.
I can see that Dr. Debs agrees. She was like, not, yeah.
I like to add to discussion, but I need water.
Oh.
Just a second.
Yeah.
1 second, my voice is a little croaky, but daí, por favor, obrigada. Obrigada. But because we were talking about maturity levels of BIM, obrigada, I would like to ask a question, if that okay, because I'm a little bit disheartened by what Dr. Luciana has told us right now, because when I'm reading about, the maturity levels of BIM worldwide, I always see in our literature that the USA and Singapore are, the main players when it comes to the usage of building information modeling, right? So, like, I totally agree with you. And knowing what I do know about the US, it does make sense now because I actually never thought about that. But why is that? Why do people feel like the USA is this great standard in the usage of building information modeling if you feel like that there's no such a thing countrywide?
Sorry, I didn't understand the last part of the question.
So what I was trying to say is that because, as I said before, the USA and Singapore are the main players, right, when it comes to the usage of building information modeling. So why is the US shown as such a great player if building information modeling is not used countrywide?
There are several USs within the US, which is interesting. Like you can, when we have a lot of companies that come here and they're doing robotics already. And then we have, again, the smaller companies that are still using AutoCAD. And I think that was, when I came here, that was the hard part for me to understand. There is a lot of diversity here. And one thing that I think it's really a great thing that they do here is that usually if they require BIM from the other stakeholders, some of the larger companies, seeing that it's going to help them, they will recommend training. And I was talking to one company, they said, well, if they can't afford training, we'll give training to them. And so I'm not sure if there is no need of a mandate, but the whole industry gets it. It gets that if, at the end of the day, if they want this to be implemented, the larger players will have to help. And they have a stake on it. The smaller ones, I mean, it's an economical problem, and Dr. Chang can probably explain a little bit her views, but my view is if it's a smaller company, the cost of implementing them might not be worth for them, then why are we pushing it? Sorry, it's kind of my view. There is a lot in the larger commercial, that's definitely millions of dollars at stake, but the smaller ones, the cost of change, unless there is a reason, that problem. For example, in the Indiana has a moratorium where you cannot pass a new law unless you prove that law will cost, I think will be more beneficial to the general public than what it's going to cost. So there is a lot of that thought process going on.
I see, that does make sense now.
Dr. Chang, would you like
Yeah.
to add something?
Yeah, so as Dr. Debs mentioned, diversity is a key things make the U.S. Still be a main player of BIM. So the main player, like large players in the U.S. in the construction industry, they have a diversity in their software package. So they have a power capacity of adapting based on the client's needs. So one company I worked on during this summer, they have a like Autodesk package, the technology stream, and the Bentley package for someone who used more familiar with Bentley, or the graphic software package. And they have enough power of adapting their technology based on the needs. At the same time, for in the US, the construction industry, they are choosing the technology based on their needs and the value of the technology. So they are aware of the value of drone and integration drone with Beam, but they are not using it all projects. They are using only the project they think that provide value for that specific one. And at the same time, on the other hand, the smaller company who don't use the Beam, they have still a market, like economic market. They can survive and they can give a value in the construction industry, so that there are so variety of levels of company and so variety of software packages they can utilize, and they're just choose what they think that has value. So that makes the US company still leading the maintaining them as a key player in Beam in worldwide, I think.
And for me, that exactly just goes back to Bruno's point that sometimes we need to make sure that they understand the value of them. And for the companies that got that value, they're definitely implementing it. So
Do you want to add something?
No, I'm just mind blown a little bit because sometimes, we're all like been enthusiasts here. So I feel like it's quite natural for us to think that it's the solution for everything, but perhaps it really isn't. And we have to think of, how to make sure that that knowledge is it's well spread across all the companies and players that might, take a place in that process. I really, yeah, that changed my mind a little bit. I'm happy that I have a new mindset to think about that.
Yeah, because it's this technology. The Beam is sold to us like it will solve all the problems of our industry, and it's really not like that. We don't need to use a atomic bomb to kill a cockroach. It's a saying here in Brazil. In this example, if we're talking about a small construction or something that it's a point in the construction, we don't need to develop a whole BIM model with all the information and all this stuff to solve this little problem. The main point is the information. How we are going to transmit the information, I think it's not the main problem. Today, nowadays, we use Revit, we use ORCID and all these tools, but the quality of information is the main point. And that's the difficult because, as I said earlier, our professionals were taught to think like we represent the information. We don't pass the information beyond in this process. And also, when you are talking about softwares, here in Brazil, one Revit license is, the last time that I checked, was 13,000 money here. It's weird to say, yeah, it's weird, but the money from here. And for a small company, that's absurd. Actually, for the most design offices here, it's absurd. One license for one computer with, I don't know, 2, 3 internships and more 2, 3, or 4 architects or engineers or professionals that design. And that's one of our biggest challenges also here. I would say like a top 5.
I will be the devil's advocate over here, okay? So if you're talking about the quality of information, right? Don't you think that making sure that everyone knows the information that is needed in that model will not make sure that the quality of that sad information will be better, right? Because if you're talking about the level of information need, right? Therefore, we are only doing whatever's extremely necessary in order to comply to the requirements of our project. Therefore, the quality of the information will be better as well, because we are going to only focus on that.
Okay, I agree, but I think we have to have in mind that what is the actual information that we need? Because when you are talking about a BIM model, for example, we can insert all kind of information. We don't need all kind of information if you are talking about, for example, a preliminary study of a cost estimation. We don't need that. We only need the information that we need from that model here in Brazil, for example, is the square meter of the building. We don't need anything more. Why have a concern to insert more information and that perhaps that fantasy that all the information of the constructions will be only in one model if we don't need that?
But I think that's exactly like we're saying the same things, but with
Okay.
different words, because we're just adding to the model what is necessary, nothing more, nothing less, just whatever is necessary for whichever phase that we are working on. So I really feel like we are agreeing right now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Dr. Debs, do you want to add something? You're like nodding again.
Now I feel like I should have some popcorn. But it's so there is, and I know that there is in Brazil in Brazil something called I think it's construção enxuta, like lean construction.
Lean
So
construction, yes.
I'm here. I'm a big advocate of lean design and construction, and I think you just said like, what's the value of adding more information if it's very aligned. We need to be mindful to what are we using it for, and then add the information that is necessary for that. The thing is, who is the model for, right? Is it for the contractor? Is it the client? Are we thinking long term? What is happening to that model at the end of the construction? And that's one thing that we are also trying to figure out here. How are the clients going to use that, and what type of information would they need?
Dr. Chang?
Yeah, I actually same question with Luciana that how long should we see the use of information when we create one, and how can we evaluate the usefulness and the justness of that information? You know, if we think about the facility maintenance and operation, we might, need to add a manufacturer URL in a furnace, but it doesn't quite necessary during the construction, right? So in that standpoint, I'm still, struggling that. And when I teach BEAM in the junior students, I always mention that when you create something in the design or construction phase, you need to think about who will benefit from that information. That's the only tip I can give them. So yeah, I'm wondering how you think about that, like the life cycle of the information.
I'm thinking right now because I do agree with you guys that we are to make sure that we have just as like the same information that we do need for the model depending on the usage of it. I feel like perhaps I don't know if I'm being a little bit naive, but I feel like perhaps if you do make sure that everything is in writing about what we do need beforehand before we start working, I feel like we are probably going to achieve better results from that because we do know what we are supposed to do. However, at the same time, I also feel like there is room for error in there as well, you know? So I'm torn. I'm really, really torn right now because I don't really have an answer for that. I just have some, food for thought and, perhaps learning a little bit more from you guys because I do feel like there is room for error over there.
But the idea of modeling your project is not prevent the errors, like so you don't have it while you're construction, while you're building the thing, or even by the end of the life cycle when you want to tear that apart. If you have already all the info that you need in the model, it won't be like space for something to go wrong.
Yeah, but sometimes too much information is it's confusing. Yeah, that's a good word for that because sometimes we have a model that's meant to be for the management stage of the building information modeling life cycle. We have lots of information over there. If the geometry is really complex, sometimes that will be a little bit harder for these people to work with that model because sometimes the stakeholder that will manipulate that in that phase. Perhaps it's not the same person that is working on the project phase. The people that work on the model in the project phase usually have more knowledge of technology and they know how to manipulate the model very well. Whereas the person who's manipulating the model in the management stage perhaps is it's just a manager, right? So why should that person know how to handle a really complex model with many phases and so much information that might be a little bit confusing for them, right? So perhaps for that case, it would be better to have a more simple model, right? That being said, we are having all that work modeling the model for the project phase, and then perhaps we are going to have to do some rework to make yet another model. I feel like that's a little bit problematic, but at the same time, I do not have an answer. You know?
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
that's why I tend to think that we as an industry, we need to pop this bubble that we are inside and try to learn with some other industries like the information industry, the technology, information communication, because they know how to handle this amount of information. There is a lot of ways, I can say, using developing tools or the process of implementation that they already use. And I think that's why I think that the answer isn't here. We can define because we don't have the expertise to work with that amount of information. We work with the representation of the information, not with the information itself. And that's the problem, because now we are facing a, a, a volume of information so big that it's hard to understand how we are going to manipulate it to do what we have to do in our construction. And that's why from my point of view, of course, we tend to leave it by side and still and keep working in the way that we have always done.
The thing is, if you don't have a model with all the information, because you have different players, right? You're gonna prepare different models, like just with the information for like the project team or the construction team. It's not like it's not easy to have different models with the information that only that player needs. So I'm guessing we need a full model with all the info, but maybe we are our discussion is going back to the education part, that you have to teach and have some kind of preparation and prepare the people that is gonna work with the model so they can know how to use it and use only the information that they need. And that includes teaching the tools, for example, or I don't know, prepare them to work with the bean, with bean.
It may be a key to change, right? Because education is the key to change most things. I might be a little bit short-sighted, but I do not know how that would work over here in Brazil, at least. But I'm really keen to, hear everyone else's perspectives on that, and perhaps, not be so short-sighted as I'm being right now.
Dr. Deb and Dr. Chang, would you like to add something?
Sure.
No, if
yeah,
that's okay. I can go to the next question.
No, one thing that I would like to add, because I had so many questions when I sometimes interact with Brazil. For example, here we have this new major that we put together called Design and Construction Integration, which part of it is dealing with the transfer of information between stakeholders in construction. But again, we do have a lot more freedom here to create a major, which is it's a whole undergraduate program. And then, we have another department here. They created the building information modeling major, so it's easier for us to create those majors. And I from what I know, and I might be wrong because I don't know the higher education system in Brazil that well, but that would be I feel like that would be extremely difficult to propose a new major that would address those, and it might be easier to add things into the other majors. But then you see civil engineering, there's so much aspects of civil engineering that is already being covered, and then architecture is the same, a lot of different aspects. So that's kind of what I could provide.
We are trying to add that in our undergrad programs. Something related to BEAM, but it's not that easy because you have like the regulation that says what do we need to study and the contents that we need to work. So our students have them by the end of the course, the program. So it's not that easy just to create something. But regarding SENAI CIMATEC, I can say that you're trying to put that inside our undergrad programs. But Brazil, I don't know.
Yeah, there is a national effort to not only being strategy, but in our undergraduation level, there is some effort, nationally speaking, we call CELBIM or CELABIM in Portuguese, that tend to discuss how we are going to insert all these topics in our undergraduation course. It's still in the beginning, but it has shown some interesting results and propositions to the implementation and teach this to our students or future professionals.
The result you're gonna see in some years. It's not something that we can implement now. Moving to the next topic, it is known that when we use BEAN, we can associate it with several technologies or innovative process. Can you share some of your own experience on practical cases in that you have had contact with the use of BEAN with other technologies like BEAN and IoT or BEAN and agile methods or among others? Dr. Chang or Dr. Deb?
Yeah, I there are so many technology we can use together with Beam, VR, AR, and 3D printing, drone, and robotics. So actually, the 3D printing, the beam provides a surface model, and then the 3D printing package will change it, the continuous linear set of uh, graphics, and then they are using it for create more accurate shape, but while reducing the material loss. That's one thing I learned. And the other is drone. We are using drone a lot to comparing uh, progress and the planned progress from beam. And at the same time, the laser scanner mostly used for progress checking, at the same time the tolerance checking, the construction quality by comparing the actual construction quality with a planned model. Like if we building a steel structure, that's gonna we can use the laser scanner a lot, and especially if we are working on the renovation project as well. Laser scanner will help us to understand the current structure. And the VR, AR, also the VR. Recently, I saw that using the VR with beam construction progress, we can train the construction workers what kinds of safety aspects, safety risk we might face during the construction phase. At the same time, for owner, VR help us to persuade the final product quality, and the AR, we can use it on site, and projecting the beam on the site and let workers know what will come next. And at the same for owner, they can ensure the quality and the specification with the AR view on the construction site. So those things I can envision the technology that can be used with beam. Yeah, maybe Dr. Debs will complement these opinions more.
Yeah, which is good because I think we do complementing things, but different. Right here, both I guess both Dr. Chung and I work with energy modeling, with building information modeling. So that allows to model the energy consumption, long-term energy consumption, and then my students kind of helping them think long-term about the building. That's one thing. And then the other, with me, I participate in the National Science Foundation large grant that we received quite a few years ago. It's still kind of ongoing, should be wrapped up pretty quickly, or maybe not so quickly, but soon, where we are evaluating how to use building information modeling for code checking. So automated code checking, where we're extracting the information from the BIM model, geometric and non-geometric information, and also doing natural language processing on the actual codes, building codes, and then trying to do, automated code checking. So that's one thing. And then the other thing in the same grant is extracting, again, geometric and non-geometric information from the building information modeling and evaluating how we can use robotics specifically for, in this case, for wood construction, light wood frame construction. So not really totally prefabbed, but how we can use automation, so robotics, to put perhaps larger panels together.
Yeah, here I can talk one thing that it's quite interesting, at least for me. Some people doesn't doesn't like, but I've been focusing my studies in the use of developing tools to generate, simulate, and extract information from BIM models. So I've been working a lot with generative design and programming using Python to generate and manage the information, and sometimes focusing in the production of the elements of the construction using some digital construction. The word just flew out of my mind. Whatever. But I think that's one interesting point, because it might help all the professionals do much deeper work and simulations using these information models. Now in our post-graduation course here, I'm teaching that tonight. It won't be streamed, but it will happen. I'm discussing with the students the development of BIM models using the Dynamo tool from Revit to do analysis and simulations and define and use this tool to help the decision process in the design.
I would like to go back a little bit to the topic of laser scanning, right? Because I feel like there is a really nice application of that tool when it comes to modeling existing conditions. So not only analyzing what has been built, such as Dr. Chang has told us, but also modeling existing buildings, for instance. For example, we have a really great application of doing that with the colonial architecture here in Brazil. And that's quite important because those structures have really complex geometric shapes, right? And they are not only complex, but they are not, they don't repeat itself, right? So every little thing is a little bit different. And because of that, you know, serving those buildings is actually a quite feat. It's really difficult. And the laser scanning tool really helps all the professionals that work with these sort of like buildings a lot. And we can definitely use that point cloud data in order to create a HBIM model that is up to date to the conditions of the building at the moment, and also a HBIM model that is really assertive when it comes to the information that we want to extract from it. So I feel like that's also a really good application that we can have with a tool.
Anything else? Before going to the next question, I would like to know if someone in the audience has a question. No? And can one of you please check the YouTube channel, to see if there is any questions, because I can't read it from here. Thank you. Some say that building knowledge modeling could be the first step toward the development of a new technology. BKM, as known, the building knowledge modeling, is still a very new and little explored concept within the construction industry, but it aims not only to create a model with information as being proposed, but a model with knowledge where design decisions are stored and evolve over time. Sometimes that would be possible with the use of machine learning, for example. Do you think that the BKM can be what will come after BIM, or even overlap it in the future? Or maybe BKM is just a new technology that will run its course away from BIM? What do you see as the future of BIM itself alone?
I don't feel like I've explored the topic well enough to have a opinion on that. But that being said, I really feel like the future of building information modeling would be, at least over here in Brazil, because we do have a problem that we think of, projects, architecture projects, and then we use BIM in order to improve our projects. I feel like building information modeling should be synonymous of designing, such as of now, use CAD tools in order to design, and that's pretty much a given when we are talking about architecture design, such as, architecture projects, civil engineering projects in general. Uh, I feel like in the future, perhaps we will not be using building information modeling as a means to differentiate our work, whereas everyone should be using it, right? So it should be natural. If we're thinking about designing, then we should be thinking about building information modeling.
Yeah, but beyond that, I tend to think that we can change the way that we create and develop the building. What I mean by that is today we propose a solution to the building, and then we try to optimize it. We're trying to find the best solution in that proposition. We try to optimize the solution. In the future, with all the process power that we can have, all the computational power that we might have in our hands, we tend to turn this design process to in a way that we have all the solutions that we can have to one problem, and we can choose the best one to that problem. It's kind of like performative architecture, or yeah, something like that. And I think that's might be the future for our industry. It's in an infinite timeline, perhaps we can achieve that, but I think it's the best scenario that I can think nowadays, today at least.
And what about Dr. Chang and Dr. Debs? The future of being, is it related to BKM, the building knowledge modeling, or something completely different?
I would say knowledge model, yes, and sometimes I think the machine learning and even the statistical approach are all connected each other. So, for example, and it's connected based on the parametric nature. So, for example, generative design, and I'm using the reinforcement learning algorithm for generative design, and that also have a parametric nature, and also graph network and graph theory, and also has parametric nature. So, and I believe that somehow the knowledge impacts of design variables on energy, and impacts on design variable to structure, and impacts of design variable to the thermal comfort. I think somehow we can connect that mathematically in the future. So I'm interested in that, and I'm trying to connect the thermal comfort, energy, and carbon emission in the built environment, starting from building and community. But this is my approach. But beam knowledge model, in a sense of containing the source of truth in geometrical relationships and informational dependency, I think the beam knowledge model can embrace the machine learning and future renovation of built environment. Anyway, yeah, yes, I hope I answer some of
Yeah,
your,
you did.
yeah.
Dr. Debs?
Yeah, I think the building knowledge management will go hand in hand with BIM, just because by definition, you can't have knowledge without information. So it's like BIM is a step to the knowledge management, and it does hold so much information. So knowledge is applied information, right? So they should go hand in hand in the future of industry. And what the future of industry looks like, it's a kind. It's, I have my own opinions of that, but in terms of knowledge management, the improvement of BIM and the diversification of use of that information will apply to the knowledge management, because we have a problem in industry. And believe me, here is there is a problem with that as well, with reuse of information across different projects. So I'm imagining that will help with gathering that information and distributing across the industry.
Do you want to add something?
Yeah, that's it. I don't know if it's a Black Mirror episode or something like that, but it seems that more and more machine learning, AI will be present in our professional days, and it seems that there is no way back to our professionals instead of knowing how to think computationally speaking. The computational thought will be something that will be needed for every professional in the future. Of course, we are talking about, I don't know, 30, 40 years in the future, perhaps. Nowadays, we have other challenges, but I think that we can say for sure that it will happen someday in the future, perhaps in an infinite timeline.
I think that Dr. Debs think it's get it. Yeah, okay. More than 50 years, maybe?
No, and that was what I was going to say. I think I want to say about 10 years ago when I was doing my master's, I was already reading about experiences in generative design using machine learning, so that there is no designer like an architect. So the designer is the algorithm. So, but that brings me to, I don't want to be so bleak, but and then the other question is, until that day comes, which we don't know what's going to look like in the future, but there is a lot of issues that I see right now of the computational thinking. And as we say here, garbage in, garbage out. We need to help our students. It's not because you use the computational tool that it's going to give you the right answer, unless you ask the right questions. So that type of thinking, reliability, which is, there's some logic. What am I inputting in the model? And what do I expect from the model? And when it spits out any results, does it actually make sense?
Yeah, I agree. And I also ask myself, who designed the algorithm that designs? And that's why I think that even more day by day we need to work more with this computational thinking and developing tools. And the starting point, I think it's Dynamo, Grasshopper. That is the main tools, but I think that's one way street to this scenario.
Any questions? No, I think everybody here has all the answers or agrees with everything that we have discussed today. I would like to thank you, everyone, for coming and watching on YouTube, and Dr. Debs and Dr. Chang for having the time, and also Professor Bruno and Professor Bruna for having the time to stay here with us. So if you want to add something, Dr. Debs and Dr. Chang, if you want to add something before we can finish our panel.
I just want to thank you for inviting me, and it was very fruitful discussion. and I look forward to further discussion in Bruno and Bruna. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I just want to echo Dr. Chang's position is to thank you for inviting for me, especially because, I'm seeing how things are going on in Brazil and just keep me updated and then seeing industry moving forward, not only here, but at the end of the day, it's one big community. The problems are shared across the disciplines and across the world. So we need to kind of help each other and move everyone forward.
Thank you for the invitation. and, and that's it. I hope we can discuss more in the future and straighten our relation to try to solve all the problems of our industry. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm also very happy to be here. It was really nice to meet you, Dr. Debs. It was really nice to see you again, Dr. Chang. So thank you for the invitation. It has definitely given me a lot to think about. So I'm very happy about that.
So that's it. Thank you so much. Bye.
Com medo de mexer.
Tá com medo de mexer, daqui a pouco
Ai. Se sou eu, vocês também, tá certo?
não sei, suei.